Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen a celestial Big Bang, holiday hijinks, and a chimp doing a Peter Falk impression. But we're going to kick things off this week with Absolute Batman number 3, written by Scott Snyder with artwork by Nick Dragotta. This issue finally feels like this book has a mission statement, and that it is something different than what we've traditionally gotten from most other Batman books, as we now see the biggest difference between the Bruce Wayne proper in the normal universe and the Bruce Wayne that is in the Absolute universe. And that difference comes by way of compromise. This issue all revolves around the escape that Alfred and Bruce have to make after the conclusion of the previous issue. And Alfred is discussing a lot of different things with Bruce here, but primarily he's discussing a way out, a way for Batman to become bigger than he is right now by more means. But also that comes by way of compromising his morals and his standing and what it means to be Batman. Basically, everything that we learned from issue number 2 with Advanced Forward, it kind of puts that into play in a different way here, as Batman really needs to think about stepping back. I really like what Scott Snyder's doing here, but it's Nick Dragotta's artwork that is really taking center stage with this issue. It makes everything menacing, whether it's the villains of the issue or Batman himself. It really harkens back to like the look and feel of the book that we got with The Dark Knight Returns, with a huge hulking Batman that is seeped in shadow. I love the artistic approach that they're taking on this, and this issue finally really cemented the fact that this is different than our normal Batman in a lot of different ways. Sticking around at DC, let's talk Action Comics 1080, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Clayton Henry. So Clayton Henry took an issue off previously, and he's back on this book now. And I gotta say, when he was off the book, it felt off. Now that he's back on the book, it feels right in every single way that felt right previously. The classic feel, the fun nature of the story. All of those feelings are back now, as this issue revolves around Superman being out of the Phantom Zone and trying to resolve the issue of the Kryptonians that were released from the Phantom Zone not making it to the place they needed to be, and now they're off causing trouble and they need to be rounded up. So Cal and Mon are out there trying to round up all of these people, and it was really great seeing all of these other secondary characters within the DC universe helping, lending a helping hand and trying to make sure that they can get everyone rounded back up and get things back to where they need to be. Clayton Henry's artwork on here, again, really just kind of puts the bow on the entire story. Without that, I really didn't feel like the story was working, but the combination of what him and Mark are trying to do really just solidified this as being back to where it needed to be. This was a fun issue. I'm really enjoying it. Nothing's going to blow your mind with this, but if you're just looking for a fun comic book, that you can kind of do as an in-between thing for the books that are a little bit heavier, this might be the one for you. Next up, let's talk Blood Squad 7, number 5, written by Joe Casey with artwork by Paul Fry. So this is the beginning of the second arc of Blood Squad 7, and I'm still continuing to find a lot of enjoyment out of this book that is trying to take a look back at the bombastic nature of the 90s, specifically the Image Comics 90s, but look through it from a lens of, here and now, and seeing how things would change and how that would have naturally progressed as time has gone on. This book may be about a celebrity superhero team, but it's deceptive in how they do that, because really it's the interpersonal relationships that the superheroes themselves have. But not only that, but the personal relationships that the team has with the government agency that is telling them what to do. And really, they're the brains behind the operation, where the superheroes are the brawn behind it. I really like how that is toying, back and forth with one another. And also considering that some of the old superheroes are parts of the agency that is controlling the team itself. I really like how they're playing against one another, as they have, the idea of what it was like to be a superhero, and maybe they think that they have better ideas than the current team has right now. Joe Casey's still crafting a really fun storyline that's, it's not too serious, but it's just serious enough to kind of take it out of just the fun, book that you're looking for. Paul Fry's artwork continues to be fantastic, giving you all those feelings of people like Stuart Immonen, and the storytelling, the pacing itself is really, really sound. So, all in all, Blood Squad 7 was a really good book. And next up, we have Daredevil number 16, written by Saladin Ahmed with artwork by Aaron Cooter. We're 16 issues into this run now, and I very firmly feel that we've had 16 identical storylines that have taken place within this book, as everything just feels like it's rinse and repeat over and over and over. Matt Murdock has a friend, that friend is possessed, they tried to exorcise demon. Over and over and over. This issue is no different. We're a year and a half into Saladin Ahmed's run, and I can't say that there's anything that has profoundly changed that has made Matt any different than the Matt that we were given in issue number 1. This was a great launching point as Matt had drastically changed as he was trapped in hell and then reemerged as a brand new character, essentially. You could have taken this anywhere. Problem is, they haven't taken it anywhere. There has been no progression whatsoever in the story or the character itself. Aaron Cooter's artwork is great, but it's the same problem that we have. It's inconsistent. When he's there, I really like it. When he's not, something feels off, and he's off more than he's on. All in all, I'm kind of just hate reading this because I'm such a big fan of Daredevil. I'm really ready for the next thing to keep coming down the pipeline. While I may keep reading it, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm going to be the one that keeps talking about it from here on out. All right, let's talk about a book that was exciting with G.I. Joe number 2, written by Joshua Williamson with artwork by Tom Riley. I both love and hate what I'm about to say here because it honestly is just so effective. This book is following the same roadmap that was in Transformers, and it's working out so well. They're taking characters that maybe are somewhat side characters and they're putting them in peril. It's making us as readers feel like anything could potentially happen here. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is something that is like off limits of being taken off of the board. And I love that. It makes this universe, the Energon universe, so exciting. It makes it so enriching. It makes it something worthwhile because a lot of these comics feel like we know what's coming down the pipeline and we know exactly what is going to happen. I can't say that for most of these books, this one included now. This was the story I wish that we had in issue number 1, but I can also see why issue number 1 had to happen in order for these events to take place. We had to kind of see those actions to see the consequences of these actions. I love that this has now become the glue that's tying together the Energon aspect of this universe here, as we're already seeing the notions of Transformers now being very much intertwined with the G.I. Joes, and we're seeing just how that is going to be back and forth played with. Tom Riley's artwork is stupendous. I love everything he's bringing to this, and Jordi Belair's colors definitely pop. I think that she works the best when she's working with an artist that uses a more simplistic line, if you will, or a more minimalistic line, I guess maybe would be a better way of saying that. I think the color choices and the artwork, again, married very well on this, and it makes everything pop off the page in a really exciting way. Overall, G.I. Joe issue number 2 was much better than issue number 1, and it made me really more excited to continue on with this series. Next up, let's talk Immortal Thor number 18, written by Al Ewing with artwork by Jan Bezeldua. This is a story all about the best natures of Thor, the character, and I kind of love that they're bringing that to the forefront. In the previous issue, it ended with Thor agreeing to basically allow the Enchantress to pull her son out of Valhalla and bring him back to the world of the living. But what wasn't told was that this was actually not the son that he were expecting. It was a son from an alternate universe that was, fathered by Thor himself. So Thor has now somewhat of a son that's in play here, a grown son who is also worthy to carry Mjolnir and could be the heir to the throne at this point. We get to see a lot of back and forth between these two characters as Thor, while he understands that he's not truly the father of this character, takes on some of those roles, and they have a really cool interaction basically with a game of catch between father and son. I really kind of liked that. The artwork is really sound on this, but I have to say, I got to critique it just a little bit because any character that has like one of these muscle bound characters, such as Thor, man, their faces end up looking straight up like Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa in the 90s when steroids were running rampant in baseball. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go take a look of the before and after pictures of these people. You're going to see a widening jawline here, and Thor definitely fits that bill. Granted, he could probably hit more home runs than either one of those two combined, but still, I would like to see a more realistic looking character here. Overall, it was a fun book. I feel like Al Ewing has really kind of, stayed on track recently, and he hasn't been kind of like sidetracked for different crossovers or different things he wants to explore. We're very firmly talking about the Thor storyline that we were given within issue 1, the gods versus the gods. And it looks like we're going to be keeping, in that on that pace. So I'm excited to see where they go with this. Am I completely sold on it? No, not really, but enough to where I still want to see where it's going. And with the finale, let's talk John Constantine Hellblazer, Dead in America, number 11, written by Cy Spurrier with artwork by Aaron Campbell. This really draws upon some of the greatest stories of John Constantine, as it's all about realization and actualization. It's all about how John basically tricks people into doing his bidding, even though it's not necessarily the bidding they would anticipate him wanting. John says it, so that makes it true and that brings it into reality. I kind of love that about the character. It's not always just about the magic. Sometimes it's about the magic of the words that he's using and I don't know, the chess game that he's consistently always playing with every single person that he interacts with. And sometimes, just sometimes, it works out not just for his benefit, but for those around him as well, because maybe this guy does have a heart. Overall, Cy Spurrier and Aaron Campbell, I think they crafted a fantastic story here. I think they have an excellent voice for the character. And I think that this really ended up putting a nice bow on the story that kind of weaved around a little bit. It zigged and zagged and got off course a bit. But I think that looking back on it, it's going to read so much better combined and condensed in a one sitting, which could be a little bit daunting, but I think overall worthwhile as well. Overall, John Constantine, Dead in America, wrapped up beautifully, and I thought they did a fantastic job. Next up, let's talk The Moon is Following Us, number 4, written by Daniel Warren Johnson with artwork by Riley Rossmo. So, this series is moving at a breakneck pace, but I also don't think it's moving quicker than the story dictates it should as well. As each issue, we're delivered something more and more and more, and it keeps the story moving quickly, but also when it needs to move forward. Daniel Warren Johnson has really just like made a name for himself for being the writer of some of these incredibly emotional, heartfelt stories, and this follows that same suit. But he also knows the audience that he's writing for. And there is a moment very early on in this issue that just goes to show he knows exactly who he's writing for. And if you've read this issue, you know the exact moment I'm talking about. It's totally worthwhile and awesome. I love seeing how the parents of the daughter, the main character of the story, essentially, are really struggling with everything that's happening here as they keep kind of just like getting right there to the finish line only to trip over their own feet or to have someone basically, pull the rug out from underneath them. Everything they are trying to do is like just enough to almost get there, but something always happens. Now, with the end of this issue, we're left with a cliffhanger that shows that maybe they're making decisions that are incredibly risky, but they're doing so because they need to do these things because nothing else is truly working out. Maybe they need to side with factions that they would not have seen themselves siding with previously. So again, Moon Following Us is crafting an incredible story here that really makes you care for each one of these characters and really care for, I don't know, their well-being, the outcome, and really seeing this story all the way through. And with a new introductory issue, let's talk The New Gods number 1, written by Ram V with artwork by Evan Cagle. Grandiose, epic, and Kirby. That is what is being brought to the table with this first issue, and I love it. It is awesome, but not only is it awesome, but it's really a distilled version of all of the big ideas that Kirby brought to the table, and it's something that many other writers in the past had failed to do. Ram V really did something special, and he made everything accessible, exciting, and understandable. We've had great writers like people like Neil Gaiman take over the Eternals, another creation of Jack Kirby. And every single one that's taken over titles like that end up really falling on their face as it like lacks, I don't know, the cohesive nature of a good story, and it just like fails to draw in all of those big ideas. So far with the first issue, I don't think that this has those failings whatsoever. Ramvi again is crafting an accessible story here that really boils down to Darkseid being gone, there being a new child that is going to be born. Orion is tasked with tracking it down, and he knows what tracking it down means. So he sets forth a plan of action basically to make sure that this child, while he needs to do his mission, will not ultimately be found by him. Really great storytelling, really exciting stuff, and the artwork by Evan Cagle is really fantastic. It is very detailed, very rendered, very kinetic. It's everything that this book should have, considering that we're working with, again, godlike figures. Awesome issue. I can't wait to see where this goes. If issue number 1 is any indicator, we are definitely in for something special with New Gods. All right, let's talk Nightwing 121, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Dexter Soy. After a couple issues now, I'm really loving the voice that Dan Waters has for Dick Grayson. I think he has a really good grasp on the character, both in terms of like what it means to be Dick Grayson, where he came from, and how he is very different from the character of Bruce Wayne, the man who raised him to not only be the man that he is, but also the superhero that he is. This really kind of puts Dick Grayson's, I guess, his privilege under a microscope, as he thinks that the world is one way and the city that he protects is one way, but he sees that not everything is under his own sight. Not everything is under his control either. And some of the things that he's dealing with in Bloodhaven, such as the poverty and the things that people turn to during times of poverty, that he can't control those things, but he needs to learn ways that'll make that right without just punching and beating people up or throwing money at the problem. He's starting to learn those lessons here. Dexter Soy's artwork has been something I criticized with the previous issue, and I feel like I still have those same feelings where certain things are under rendered and where it's kind of feel rushed. Some of them just feel a little bit jerky and out of place, and it's better with this issue, but still very much the same feelings that come along with that. And it could be the combination of the colors on this. I'm not quite sure, but either way, something just does not feel right within the pages of this book. When it does hit, it hits hard, and those are very specifically in the action set pieces. Everything does feel kinetic in those time pieces. But sometimes, I don't know, something just feels off. It doesn't feel right, and it's usually during the conversational parts of the book. Overall, Nightwing has been really good. It's been fun. I can't say that it's anything that's going to change your life, but I think it's definitely been something that's worthwhile. Next up, let's talk Nullhunter number 3, written by Michael Walsh with artwork by Gustavo Vargas. I'm still continuing to have a lot of fun with this series. And again, this is a retelling of the 12 Labors of Hercules, but set in the landscape of a sci fi kind of epic. And in previous issues, I had kind of compared it to Blade Runner. This feels definitely more akin to something like Total Recall. Very Philip K. Dick, obviously, with these things that are being compared to it. But again, it's super fitting. It makes a heck of a lot of sense here. Gustavo's artwork continues to be fantastic as everything that is mechanical and science fiction driven feels real. It feels like something that should exist in this world. You feel the moving gears and the gyrating metals on the main character's arms as he makes every single kind of movement. And in this issue, when they're putting on the headpieces that kind of bring them into a virtual reality-esque type of landscape, everything feels like kind of like that 80s aesthetic that I love about things like RoboCop and Total Recall, things like that. Totally drives that forward. One of the big things that really work for this issue, though, is really the lettering of Becca Carey, as I feel like with this being so sci-fi driven, the organic feeling lettering doesn't feel jarring. In fact, it feels like it's something that marries the book together with the reader, which makes it accessible as opposed to being, I don't know, something jarring and overwrought or something like that. I think that it really fits with drawing that reader in with the lettering the way that it is, and not being something that is so matrixy, maybe that's the wrong word, but something like that. It's not so sci-fi that it makes it something that's very difficult to read. I love the approach that they're taking. Overall, each issue is kind of a standalone, and it's, telling these stories here, but it's the task by task by task, which is really appreciated because you get a single standalone story that is really building off of the arc that will be the 12 issues. It was exciting stuff, and I had a lot of fun with it. And with another finale, let's talk Plastic Man No More, number 4, written by Christopher Cantwell with artwork by Jacob Edgar. This, again, was surprising at how much they leaned into the body horror aspects of this book, considering it was Black Label, but it was only listed as 13 plus, where I feel like it really walked a fine line between what was, I don't know, accessible for most readers and maybe accessible for only some readers. Really razor thin line there, but I did a really good job at that. This was a heartfelt storyline that really, I don't know, it toyed with the ideas of who Plastic Man really is and where his motivations truly were lying, as you had to question it here and there throughout the entirety of this storyline, whether he was doing things for himself, doing things for his family, or more specifically his son. I think that this issue really cemented where his heart and mind were, and kind of how things all played up. Very emotionally resonant, very, I don't know, heartfelt. I really loved the message behind this book, and I had a lot of fun with it. The artwork, again, really ramped in and leaned into the horror aspects of it, but it didn't take away from the emotion of each and every character as you felt every expression that was on their face. Christopher Cantwell is known for kind of like being able to craft these incredibly emotion forward stories, and this definitely fits that bill. So overall, this was a very effective ending to a very effective series for a character that usually doesn't really get the spotlight. All right, let's talk The Power Fantasy, number 5, written by Kieran Gillen with artwork by Casper Wingard. This was a look back at the atomics, if you will, the superpowered beings within this universe, and it really took a lot of time to spotlight how they got together, what really bound them together, the ideas that put them together as a team or as a like-minded group of individuals that had a common goal, which was to reshape the world. They kind of bounce back and forth between those things as you get looks into the past and you see those bonds forming, and then you see the future where those bonds have almost completely, fallen apart. I love the aesthetic that they're using as it makes it very clean and identifiable about what's happening in the past and what's happening in the future, as Casper Wingard really crafts an awesome look to the book when we're looking into the past. But he doesn't just do it as a way to differentiate the past and the future. He also does that as a way to differentiate the viewpoints of the character, as the past really has this punk rock poster aesthetic with like pasted on letters that have been snipped out of magazines and news clippings and things like that. Really awesome artistic approach on that. That is, again, helps you differentiate the time, but also helps you identify the viewpoint of the character themselves. Really fantastic artwork on this. Kieran Gillen is also crafting a story that, again, I don't want to say it's a more realistic look at superpowers, but it is definitely more so than what we get from the big two. This is playing with ideas of how governments would look at these characters, how these characters would view the government, seeing that they're all powerful and they should be able to make the decisions, albeit can they make societal decisions when they are just one mind and one person. They're really playing with those a lot again, but now we're also seeing that they're playing with the idea of maybe those two things combining and maybe people working together that you wouldn't anticipate working together. It's really cool. It's really fun. I can't wait to see the next arc as they continue the story over and over, because this is going to be something that grows, evolves, and changes. And when things change, I have the notion that the change is going to be pretty dramatic, considering the power sets that we're working with and the consequences that can happen for countries, the world, all of the individuals, everything. It's a really fun book. It's really exciting, and I definitely think you should be reading it. Next up, we have Psylocke number 2, written by Alyssa Wong with artwork by Vincenzo Caratu. I don't know what it is, but I really think that the standalone books amongst the X line, the new relaunch of the X-Men, might actually be the strongest, as the team ones are falling by the wayside. This was a great standalone issue where we see the continuation of Psylocke and her mission as she's trying to free these enslaved children from, from whoever it is that is stealing them, and with this plots to really kind of like, harvest mutant growth hormones. But it also serves as really a standalone issue of looking back into her past and kind of the mission at hand, as she really truly does fulfill the mission that she was put out to do, which was, save these children. But then again, we also see that there's an overarching thing that's happening here, especially with the character of John Greycrow, as she's developed a relationship with him, and he is now being pulled into the fray in a dastardly type of way. The artwork on here is really fantastic. It's really hyperkinetic. Every action set piece is awesome looking, very much in the house style of Marvel, but I think that it is definitely worthwhile and up to the standard that you would expect from a good action comic book. And the character of Conan, now that she's being explored more, seeing that she's separated from Betsy Braddock, she's really developed into truly a character of her own that really, I don't know, fits the bill for a Psylocke book. I'm really having a lot of fun with this. Does it feel a little bit the same as other X books? Sure, yes, it does. But of the X books that feel the same, I think that this one stands out above the rest. All right, let's talk The Rocketfellers #2, written by Peter Tomasi with artwork by Francis Manapul. Heartwarming and charming. I mean, that's all I can really say about this issue is heartwarming and charming. There's not a lot of big things that happen within this issue, albeit we do get a look at the villainous characters within this book as they're trying to seek out our main characters who have gone back in time and have kind of been in hiding ever since then. And we get viewpoints that really include everything that is of the Ghost Machine world, even ones that aren't taking place within this universe, as we kind of have like the Geiger universe, and then we have the Rook Exodus universe, and now we have the Rockefellers universe. And all of those things, you can see maybe there's a way that these all meld together and become one, which is kind of exciting. But overall, this is a Christmas story. This is a Christmas book about the main characters who are, again, trapped in the past, celebrating Christmas. It's kind of awesome. They gripe about things that they have in the future that they don't have now. They struggle over certain things that they couldn't do in the future that is all too normal today. Very simple things, very easy things like the idea of chopping down a tree, but still super fun seeing how the different ideas that they have in the future are played with in present day right here and right now. No big stakes, nothing big and crazy happens. It's just a family being together at Christmas time. And hey, what better time to read a book like that than right now? So overall, Rocketfellers didn't do anything to push the story forward, but I still had a lot of fun with it. And with our next issue, let's talk Savage Sword of Conan #6, written primarily by Jason Aaron and drawn primarily by Jeff Isherswood. I really had a lot of fun with the second part of this issue, as I was a little bit critical about the first part of it, as it was a journey of Conan seeking out this cave, seeking out the people that were there under the guise of rescuing people, only to see that it was really possibly the witch that needed rescuing more so than anything. It seemed very simplistic, and with the second part of this storyline we see the culmination of everything, and it made the first part of that story totally more worthwhile. We see King Conan as he's kind of shifted his viewpoints and changed sides here, as the witch hunters that were coming after him, we get the revelation that maybe the leader of them really has more to do with gaining power from these witches than protecting the people from these witches. I really like how they played with that idea, how Conan got drawn into the fray, and how that impacted him and how that changed everything about what was happening here. The biggest change, though, is the future of Conan, the time when Conan maybe won't be around anymore, and how that changes who the heir to the throne may be. Really fun ideas that are being played with in the entire landscape of the timeline of Conan here, and it made it totally worthwhile. Again, the magazine format totally fits with this book here. I love the black and white pages. After that first issue, they had everything ironed out to make this look like a fantastic presentation for the character of Conan. That was totally worthwhile. So overall, Savage Sword of Conan #6, excellent continuation of this book. Next up, let's talk Standstill #5, written by Lee Lowridge with artwork by Dave Acosta. I hate to say it, this issue bummed me out though, as we lose the main series artist of Andrew Robinson. And it's not to downplay what Dave Acosta can do, but I had the notion that this was going to be a book that was primarily delivering something that Andrew Robinson was really going to kind of showcase his artwork. And we got that for 3 issues. And then we didn't get it with issue 4. And then we didn't get it with issue 5. And I don't know. The book feels like it's already told the story that it needed to tell, as our antagonist character has already done the quote unquote good things in his mind, even though he was doing dastardly things for, you could argue, for reasons that maybe were justifiable. But our hero character hasn't done anything to really push the story forward, and the story hasn't delivered anything to make us feel that he is the heroic character that he could be or should be. Overall, this didn't do anything to push that needle forward. It didn't do anything to really drive the story forward besides allowing them to have a discussion and then part ways. We probably could have skipped that. We didn't really need it at this point, and it's really done nothing for me to get me reinvested in the story now that the artwork has become something that is a bit secondary. Overall, Standstill just kind of didn't do it for me. Speaking of something that did do it for me, let's talk Tin Can Society number 4, written by Peter Warren with artwork by Francesco Mobili. I love how each individual issue has kind of given us a look into the past and the present of a certain character that was kind of in the inner circle of our main character, the superheroic character, who is the one that met his untimely demise. We start to learn more and more about them, and it kind of opens up our eyes to the reasons that maybe they could be the killer of our main character, or the reason that they absolutely would never be that character. Everyone has motivations, everyone has reasoning, and the story really unravels and grows into something that makes it really engrossing and rich, and it makes you care for each one of these characters, whether or not they were accomplices or culprits to the things that have happened. We do get some big revelations in this issue as to maybe who this killer is and how it's going to play out from here on out, and some of the missteps that were taken by each and every one of these friends within this friend group, and what's really led to this point now. I love the artistic approach on this. I think that Peter Warren, again, is thinking about things from the single issue standpoint, which you don't get a lot nowadays. I feel like people write for the trade more often than not. This has been continually satisfying each and every single issue, and I think it's going to read well as a trade overall too. So it's like you get a little bit of both. I love that. It's making for a really satisfying read, and I think it's going to culminate into something that's really truly special here. So Tin Can Society, definitely make sure to check it out. All right, let's talk Ultimate Spider-Man number 12, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Marco Cacchetto. This was a really fun issue as we get to spend time within the Parker Watson household during the Christmas time. And I had a lot of fun with the interpersonal relationships between Mary Jane, her sister, her mother, Uncle Ben. Like everyone that was there basically had something to say and was given a really like a little moment to shine in this. It was awesome. I love the interactions between Mary Jane and Gal, as Gal definitely thought that Mary Jane was basically settling for Peter Parker and did not want them together. It felt a little meta. It made me wonder, is Gal working for Marvel Editorial? Is she the reason maybe that they're trying to keep Peter and Mary Jane apart in the 616? Who knows? Time will tell on that. What I can say is, while I thought I was going to be happy with Marco Cacchetto coming back on the artwork, I am, but in that same vein, it felt very rushed. It feels like there were panels that were lacking background detail, albeit backgrounds at all, where it drew me out of the story. It wasn't like reduction for reduction's sake or to make the story like flow better. It just felt like the time wasn't there to actually complete it to make a deadline. And that doesn't sit right. That feels bad. It feels wrong. And then when you have an artist that is the caliber of Marco, yeah, it definitely feels just like totally off kilter, and it drew me out of the book. What I can say is that the writing in this is incredibly sound. I love the dialogue. I love, again, the character back and forth between everyone, but the ending that this delivered truly made my eyes go wide and my jaw drop because I was not anticipating it. I wasn't expecting it by any means. And I think that this is going to deliver something special for the second year of the Ultimate Universe. Next up, we have Wonder Woman number 16, written by Tom King with artwork by Bruno Redondo. After the previous issues that we've had that have been incredibly weighty and incredibly emotional, this issue pivots hard as we get to spend the entire issue with the character of Detective Chimp. And it is basically like watching an episode of Columbo with a monkey impersonating Peter Falk. No joke. I don't think I'm the only person that's going to be saying that. It is 100% true. You hear the voice in your head if you've watched a single episode of Columbo, which I know we're of a certain age group. I'm aging myself, but it is what it is. It was a fun issue. It was not necessarily an exciting issue, but it was really a refreshing change of pace from what we had gotten previously. You can't stay kind of like, I don't know, I guess weighted down by everything that was happening to the character of Diana and to what's happening in her life and her inner circle. So we got to spend a little bit of time here with the Detective Chip character. And I love that he's basically just like hammering over and over and over about the murder of Steve Trevor and like what caused it and why he was at these certain places. And of course, considering he's doing the Peter Falk impression, he definitely has his, oh, one more thing moment. It was really fun. It was really exciting. Redondo draws the characters incredibly well. It makes for a really engrossing issue. Was it the best issue in the world? No. Did I have a lot of fun with it? Absolutely. And with my runner-up pick of the week, let's talk The Sacrificers number 13, written by Rick Remender with artwork by Max Fiumara. This was a stupendous issue. I loved seeing, I guess, the culmination of what's happened previously as Pigeon has made some decisions to go after the gods, but also has seen the ramifications of his violent actions. But it's not necessarily swaying him to do things differently. What happens in this issue is that he is still a man on a mission, but what he learns is that through a conversation with one of the god characters that he's going after, they're all just cogs in a machine, very truly. And those cogs have their purpose and have their place. But it doesn't mean that those cogs and those people can't turn another direction. I love the artwork that Max brings on this book, as there are a lot of like violent set pieces that take place, and every punch lands, every kick hits, you feel them, everything has a really great energy to it. But it's in those slower moments, in those conversational moments, that the book really opens up and you start to see how things are really going to play out. This is an incredibly nuanced book, as there's no one that's necessarily truly right. There's no one that's necessarily truly wrong. It's a series of decisions made by a series of characters that are going to push this story forward, but it's more so about the story than the character. And I really appreciate that, because there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret every single thing that happens in every single issue of this. That's what makes The Sacrificers so engrossing. And with my top comic of the week, let's talk Batman and Robin Year 1, number 3, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Chris Samney. This book is incredibly cinematic, and it's done so very meaningfully and very purposefully, as the paneling definitely is very landscape and it spans each and every page. But I think even more so than that, the lettering and the design of this book like kind of play out in a way that you would anticipate a movie playing out. As the first couple pages, you see certain things kind of get spelled out throughout the page, whereas normally the credits just kind of are given on a splash page. No, these are delivered in certain panels, very much the same way that you would get them in frames of a movie, where you would see the actors' names and the directors' names listed individually at certain times. I feel like this is very intentional, as this is a very cinematic book. I really love that they're doing that, because it feels so appropriate. While this book is fun and it's playing with the character of Dick Grayson as his initiation as Robin, it never strays too far into the fun, as they understand the weight of the circumstances that are taking place right now, as Gotham City is basically under attack by an unknown force, a new crime family that's starting to take control of things. It's leaning into the detective parts of it. It's taking time to really set forth the action that needs to happen in this to keep it exciting. And then it's balancing in those fun moments when they can. It's a time where Bruce is unsure about his actions and what he needs to do, both as a father and as a superhero. And I don't know, they're just balancing all of these things really stupendously. Again, it's a cinematic feeling book, looking book. The dialogue feels very much in that same vein as well. There's really weighty conversations that are had here between the characters of Bruce and Dick, and primarily Two-Face, as revelations come out within this book for certain characters. Stupendous stuff. I love this book. The color palette is also fantastic as well. I haven't mentioned that, but Mateus Lopez does a fantastic job on this book. Overall, 3 issues in now, this has been absolutely stunning, and I can't wait to see this continue each and every issue. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read, and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.